Yes, we are back. Welcome to the October edition of the DIVEBOMB Power Rankings podcast with myself, Dan, joined as always by Owen.
Hello, guys. How's it going? It's been a while.
It certainly has, but unfortunately, we have to wait a bit longer for Ollie. He cannot be with us this time around. So, welcome back, Apostolos.
Hello, people, and good to be back.
Yes, good to have you back as well. And as motorsport series around the world are closing off their seasons, so we finished with IndyCar, F2s coming to F3s now finished their seasons and deciding their championships. There's less and less, unfortunately, but there is still plenty to talk about. Key championships decided in F1, World Rally Championship, and DTM in October, as well as key twists in the MotoGP title battle as they head to Valencia for the final round. As I said, still loads to discuss, and still, as usual, a top 10 to share with you. So, as ever, we'll kick off with Formula One.
F1 for October got underway with the Singapore Grand Prix, and the Singapore Grand Prix made its return to the calendar because of, obviously, COVID. It made its return since 2019, and I don't think it really disappointed. Qualifying was very eventful, particularly as Max Verstappen was 9/10 of a second up on his Q3 run, and then came into the pit lane because Red Bull underfueled the car. That was bitterly disappointing, and of course, as anyone will know, it can lead, because Singapore is a street track. If you're lower down and in the pack, it can lead to a very difficult race.
Well, on Sunday, it was looking interesting. The heavens had opened and it was raining in Singapore. Remember what happened last time, rated 2017, with that dramatic three-car collision? Could that happen again? Well, it didn't. As what tends to be the case nowadays, the race start was delayed and delayed and delayed, which is so frustrating for us viewers who wanted to see a free wet race in Singapore. And one question came to many people's minds. What's the point of wet tyres? We're just waiting for this race start where they're going to go on to intermediates. So, guys, what do you think? Why am I using these wet tyres when the conditions are suitable?
Well, I think that many of the drivers have complained about the wet tires. I mean, we saw that very next race in Japan. So, yeah, perhaps they themselves don't want it that much. Plus, F1 is too keen on safety now that they just don't want to risk it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what is the point of these wet tyres? I remember all the way back to Brazil 2016, and it was absolutely pouring down with rain, and as I'm sure a lot of people will remember, and we started behind a safety car, and now we're just not even starting on the wet tyres. So it's very difficult, but at the same time, how can we complain about not starting under wet conditions, but then also complain that the Japanese Grand Prix was too wet and that we should have red flagged it? So it's I do kind of have some sympathy for the FIA because it can't be easy, but at the same time, it is annoying as a spectator who is paying to watch the sport.
We all kind of know, don't we, that like wet weather racing is Formula One heritage. Some of the best races that come to mind, they're all wet, aren't they? So, top of my head, Brazil 2008, those last rain drops on the last few laps, Brazil to pole, for example. Europe 93 with Senna's first lap. Some of these brilliant F1 memories come from wet weather racing. It's a shame that we don't get this nowadays. We can understand the safety that the FIA had to consider, and the wet tyres are really bad this year, it has to be said. So Pirelli needs to do a better job of that next year if we want good racing. But we did eventually start the race after a long delay, and we were in for some action.
Perez did take the lead at the start thanks to having a drier grid slot, much like everyone directly behind him, and the pack neatly slotted into place for the first couple of laps. Thanks to Verstappen's poor showing in qualifying, or his team's poor showing in qualifying, I should say, he was stuck behind around the lower end of the points, and eventually found himself right behind Fernando Alonso, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Alonso was holding his own against Verstappen on a notorious to overtake track, but yet again, for the fourth time at that particular time, his engine let him down.
It was a tough day for all of the champions on the grid, as you just mentioned, Apostolos. Alonso DNF'd from the race. Lewis Hamilton made a huge mistake just coming off sort of the highest speed of the entire circuit. as he locked up and just he could have. It looked like he tried to maybe go down the escape road, but he just committed too early, too soon, and he ended up in the barrier. Somehow did not have to DNF that race. Incredible, like Mercedes structure of their car. But Max Verstappen did a very similar thing, but he did just about manage to go down the escape road. But I don't know what it was that race, but the champions, the experienced drivers, they were all making mistakes around there. It was very crazy to watch, and it even led to Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin leading both Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen at one point.
Yeah, as you said, a very tough race for all the champions and most experienced drivers. But one very experienced driver did win, and that was Perez. Even after he was given, well, he was informed anyway of a race penalty for a safety car infringement, he still pulled the gap to Leclerc and got his second win of the year. And followed by the two Ferraris, of course. A rather alright showing by Leclerc. He really tried, but at the end, he just couldn't do it. Sainz, on the other hand, just wasn't on the pace. He was threatened by Hamilton, got some threats even by Norris at one point, who was in the DRS range. Still, he held on to third. But do you guys think that this was Perez's best ever win in F1?
Not for me. It was a very composed and relaxed performance, but you do have to consider some of the factors. Verstappen wasn't in play, and the Ferraris just didn't have the pace. I think back to his first win, Sakir 2020, spun on lap 1, all the way from last to first, overtook everyone that came under so much pressure that race, but he fought his way through, and it was a really nice way to take his first victory, and I think that is the victory that will live long in the memory. The last to first story of the race was really what's up. And I think the speciality, especially that being his first win and in a racing point, that's a bit more special for me personally.
Yeah, I definitely agree that Sakir 2020 was just something else. I guess with it also being his first win, that just elevates the emotions of it all. But there is definitely something to be said about Sergio Perez's street circuit ability. I mean, he won Monaco this year, which was incredible, and now he's won another street circuit in Singapore. Or perhaps you could even argue that his teammate Max Verstappen might not be so quick around a street circuit. That's one of my theories. But yeah.
Well, Perez he did win Monaco. Not Monaco, he won Baku, last year as well. And he got pole, didn't he, at Saudi Arabia? So maybe he is a bit of a street circuit expert. But yeah, we'll see. Well, Verstappen has said actually that he prefers a traditional circuit to a street circuit. So maybe your theory is correct. So moving on to Japan, we return there for the first. Similarly to definitely a lot of drivers are looking forward to returning to Japan, and it was Verstappen who took what is nowadays sort of a rare pole, and it was very narrowly up beside him on the front row. And come Sunday, yet again, we had a wet condition. This time, the FIA, they were on schedule in very, very wet conditions, and Verstappen and Leclerc were side by side to turn 1. Leclerc had got the start. Verstappen braved it around the outside through turn 1 and turn 2. An absolutely spectacular manoeuvre. Both of them excellent car control of racecraft to make sure it didn't collide, but it was brilliant to see. It was nice to see us getting going in wet conditions until
there was a huge accident in the beginning of Sector 2 with Carlos Sainz crashing out just after the hairpin. Oh boy. Yeah, what a huge accident, and it led to so much debris everywhere, so they red flagged the race. Not before a tractor was put out onto the circuit as Pierre Gasly was coming past at pretty much top speed. What on earth was this? I mean, Jules Bianchi, of course, back in 2014, passed away, was put into a coma because of an accident at this track in very similar conditions. And I think it was Jules Bianchi's dad, I want to say. He said it's a very disrespectful move on the FIA's part. And to be completely honest, I think the entire motorsport fan base and F1 fan base fully agreed with him. But what do we think, guys? It's just, what are the FIA doing with this wet weather, not starting, and now they are starting, and the wet tyres? It's just crazy. What do you guys think?
I'm how does this tractor get there in the first place? And the thing is, the worst thing is, okay, you can have a tractor on the track, but it's not well lit. It's just like when you look at the onboard, Gasly doesn't see the tractor until he's gone past it. Basically, I don't know what it's doing there. There should be, especially after what happened to Jules Bianchi, there should be nothing. No recovery vehicles on the track in that scenario, especially in the wet like that, when the visibility is so poor. I mean, the FIA, week after week, it's just error after error after error. And it's becoming, I want to say, a comedy show now, but it's almost gone past that point. It's just every week, you just think, what are they doing? They need to sort themselves out. And after this incident, they obviously got rid of the alternating race directors that had been going. It's just Niels Vitic who will be doing that for the rest of the season. But yeah, it really does bemuse me. What do they do every week? They just get the basics wrong.
I just think that they're too scared to now make mistakes or admit mistakes after what happened last year in Abu Dhabi, where people are still talking about it. So yeah, the situation has led them to basically not being able to blame themselves. They have to blame someone else. They can no longer make mistakes. They don't have that window anymore. So yeah. Plus the race directors, the rotating race director this year, big mistake. It really didn't work out.
So after that incident, we had another very, very, very long delay. 2 hours long. We were waiting for a restart. Even when the drivers said they wanted to get going, there was a point. I think we all thought we were going to have a repeat of Spa. And yet again, another very, very lengthy delay, sorry. But we did finally get out there after a long while. And the racing, I think, was almost worth the wait.
Yeah, it was worth the wait, actually. We had a thrilling race restart, where basically we were again reminded that the wet tires are useless, because already on the first lap, the drivers were switching to inters. Well, those who did very early on actually did gain a lot of places. And yet again, we're talking about Alpine, because Alonso did want to switch early to the inters, but guess what? His team didn't, and they forced him to stay out on the wets. He led a lap or two or something, which was completely worthless. So yeah, he was then stuck behind slower cars, basically. But he did fight back. He did stop again for inters, mind you, but it did pay off, because he did get Russell, and he almost got Vettel, who himself had an amazing recovery after he crashed with, well, Alonso at the first lap and fell down to last. But yeah, 0.011 seconds, the gap between them across the line.
As you just mentioned, it was a very close quarters battle between two incredible drivers, Alonso and Vettel, and it was also a close quarters incredible battle between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. Perez was hunting him down for so many laps, as the Ferrari just doesn't seem to quite have the tyre wear. It seems that the tyre just gets more worn out compared to the Red Bull, and this gradually just allowed Perez to slowly close in, and eventually, on the final lap of the race, in the final braking zone at the chicane, Charles Leclerc made a huge error and just cut the entire chicane, and that led to him having an albeit strange post-race penalty, which gave way to a lot of confusion, as I'll let Dan touch on why there was so much confusion after that race.
Well, we all thought with these new regulations after Spa last year that we were getting, was it half points or 3/4 points, whatever it is nowadays, for the race, because it didn't go to full distance. So we were like, okay, Verstappen, the championship will have to wait until the next round in the United States, even after that little mess at the end. However, in one of the most bizarre interviews I think I've ever seen, Johnny Herbert, at the time we were cringing because we thought he'd wrongly announced Max as champion. But what seemed to have happened is the FIA awarded full points because the race didn't get stopped, and because the time limit under the green flag, we had the full points awarded, which was a bit of a weird loophole. Eventually, we got there and we found out that Max Verstappen was crowned world champion for the second year in a row. This time, a polar opposite of last year, shall we say. Last year, final lap of the final race to win the title, whilst this year, he didn't even know until 10 minutes after the race had ended. So how confusing is F1 nowadays? I think it's a bit, especially for the average fan, and even the hardcores like us three. We had no idea that he won the championship. But not only that, well, not only Verstappen, he had a brilliant drive, but also some other very impressive drives further down the field.
Exactly, and what the FIA can't take away for sure is Vettel's incredible comeback drive, as we mentioned before. And, well, they doubted him the entire season. His brand new rookie teammate outscored him, but Latifi finally scored his first points of the year, and probably sadly will be his last, but that doesn't matter. He scored them in very wet conditions in Japan, which, let's be honest, guys, it's impressive. Okay, good for him.
Yeah, a nice little send off before he leaves F1. Nice to see it. You know, we would take the mick a bit of Nicholas Latifi, but it's nice to see him have a good race once in a while.
Yeah, very true. I mean, Latifi, he's come into F1 at an awkward period. He came in in the years of COVID, and it's definitely not been easy for him at all. But we then moved to the United States at COTA, and in my opinion, of the two US races this year, one being, in my opinion, a car park race, and the other one, this one, COTA, being an absolutely incredible Grand Prix. The weekend got underway with Carlos Sainz taking pole position ahead of Max Verstappen. As Dan said earlier, to be completely honest, Max is not incredible on a Saturday. He's not, great at getting pole position, but Carlos Sainz definitely was on that Saturday afternoon. And Ferrari, one of them was on pole, and then Charles Leclerc had an engine penalty that carried over into the Grand Prix, and unfortunately he had to start way down at the order. However, it was even worse. Yes, that weekend got worse for Scuderia Ferrari, because on the very first lap and on the very first corner, Carlos Sainz was hit by a wild George Russell coming up the inside of him, and there was absolutely nothing Carlos Sainz could have done, really. His season, I've just actually released an article about it, so shameless plug there, but he's had such a bittersweet season, where he got his first win, of course, at Silverstone, but then he has races like these where he just has so much misfortune come to him, and it's very disappointing.
The race then continued, and we had a safety car after Valtteri Bottas spun into the gravel at turn 19, and there would be more drama on the safety car restart, where Fernando Alonso did his best Mark Webber impression by flying into the air after hitting the back of Lance Stroll. After, to be honest, Stroll quite dangerously jerked over to the left. Alonso went up on two wheels while Stroll dramatically crashed into the barrier and then skidded across the track. It looked for sure Stroll's race was definitely over, and it looked for certain that Alonso's race was over. But we'd later find out that was not the case. But there would be more drama further up the field.
Indeed, at the front, a battle was evolving between Hamilton and Verstappen. Well, I should say Verstappen and Hamilton. And thanks to Verstappen's 11-second stop, Leclerc got in the mix. In fact, Verstappen came into the path of Leclerc and had to stay behind him for quite a few laps. They had some brilliant battles, like they reminded me of Austria and Silverstone 2019. But yeah, Verstappen did eventually get through. A good part of that has to come down to his engine superiority, has to be said, but still. And then he chased after Hamilton, well, for not the first time this year, I think, but it didn't matter. He did eventually get him in the end, with quite a few laps to go, and did go on to win. Not exactly easy victory, but he's had harder before.
As he always seems to do this year, somehow Max Verstappen finds a way to win, and he won yet again in the United States. Red Bull Racing were crowned Constructors' Champions for the first time in 9 years, for the first time since 2013. And Verstappen, as I just said, he always finds a way to win, no matter what problem comes at him. He finds yet another way, and in the United States, he equaled Michael Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel's record for the most wins in one season with 13. But there was a lot more action after he'd crossed after he'd reached the checker flag.
There really was, because, after Aston Martin kind of messed up Sebastian Vettel's strategy, he was put way back in the pack, and somehow, I have no idea how he did this, but Sebastian Vettel and Kevin Magnussen were locked in on that final lap, especially into an incredible battle. I mean, just if you're listening to this, go and watch it because I cannot really describe how incredible this was. But especially the second half of the lap, coming off the back straight, I think it was just incredible. I mean, Magnussen was trying to defend so hard from Sebastian Vettel, but Vettel was on fresher tyres and coming through I think it's the triple right-hander. Vettel tried to go around the outside, then he was going underneath Kevin Magnussen heading into the penultimate corner, and somehow he actually made a move in the final corner and just about managed to do it. And yeah, what an incredible battle. And Sebastian Vettel's comments after the race, he sounded so exhilarated, so happy about that battle. It was almost like a little bit of a nostalgic Vettel, which was a bit strange. Kevin Magnussen said actually that he's got a lot to learn from that fight and that he's not too disappointed. So K-Mag, we all know that he's a bit he likes to get his elbows out, maybe sometimes too often, and clearly his racecraft has improved significantly from earlier this year, like when he hit Lewis Hamilton in Spain.
And the Circuit of the Americas wasn't done with the drama yet. After the race had finished, Haas lodged a protest that Alonso's car should have gotten a black and orange flag because of his wing mirror, which was half broken and eventually fell off. The FIA agreed and gave him a 30-second time penalty, which dropped him from 7th, which he recovered brilliantly, to 15th. But Alpine protested Haas's protest, and the FIA said, well, you're right, actually. We couldn't do that, so they gave him his 7th place back. If anything, this shows how incompetent the FIA have gotten over the last few years.
Yeah, so what a thrilling race we had in America. Certainly one of the best of the year. But for you guys, was it the best of the year?
Well, it was certainly a contender, I do agree. But for me personally, I still think that the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix had a little bit more of everything. Right amount of battles, for the lead, mind you. More controversies, more up and down the field. So yeah, but Kota really did deliver yet again for the second time running. What a gem of a circuit.
It really is. I love this track. I feel like it's quite underrated, and hopefully not anymore. But for me, yeah, it is actually race of the year because the storylines, just the storylines. You had Carlos Sainz on pole, who's been so underrated this year. You had Lewis Hamilton. Could he get his first win and keep the record of winning in every season? You had Red Bull's pit stop blunder, which was a huge shame, but then Max Verstappen delivering, well, I would say an extraordinary performance. Obviously it was, but we're very used to seeing that from him, especially this year. And then you even had a little taste of Sebastian Vettel back in the battles, and yeah, it was just an incredible race. Of course, there was that huge accident, which was a shame because I feel like Fernando Alonso, obviously, he had his incredible comeback. It was just all of the world champions on the grid had such an incredible race. I guess that is kind of how I'd sum it up, is every single world champion on the grid just really delivered in that one.
Gotta say, the Circuit of the Americas is becoming a bit of a modern classic, in my opinion. It's definitely up there with, the new kind of breed of circuits. It's up there with Bahrain for me, with one of the best. It's one of the races I definitely look forward to the most each year. And we went from one brilliant track to a bit of an average one in Mexico, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, where Max Verstappen took pole with the Mercedes. Looks a bit more on the pace this weekend, lining up P2 and 3. They were on the pace. Ferrari certainly were not. They had tuned down the engines because of the high altitude. They wanted to save the engine, and they were way off the pace. Charles Leclerc qualified behind Valtteri Bottas, of all people. And the race, didn't really live up to its expectations, did it?
Well, not really. It was an alright start, but the cars quickly formed a train, and there was basically no action until the first round of pit stops, with only Ricciardo really making an overtake it was Juan Yu Zhou. for 12th. So yes, and Ricciardo did provide most of the entertainment for that race after he decided to go long, very long in fact, longer than anyone else on the mediums, and switch to the soft for the final few laps. A strategy which could have worked, and to be fair, it did, but he did make life difficult for himself by rushing an overtake on Tsunoda and basically punting him off the road. Tsunoda had to retire, of course. Daniel did get a 10-second penalty, slightly harsh, but you can't blame the FIA this time, really. So he did take it rather well, actually. In fact, too well. It was probably his best performance at McLaren, second only to his win at Monza, and he made an excellent recovery to 7th. Of course, it was slightly helped by Fernando Alonso's fortunes, or rather misfortunes.
Yeah, Fernando Alonso, once again, if it isn't the strategy, it's the FIA. And if it isn't either of those two things, it's the engine reliability. I know that Esteban Ocon has struggled with this as well. Of course, they both drive for Alpine this year, which, if you know your history on teams, you will know that they are basically just Renault with a new fancy name. And they also have Renault engines that, well, we definitely saw Renault engines blowing up left, right, and centre in 2017 and 2018 in the Red Bull cars. They then ditched them for Honda, and now their reliability issues are back in 2022. Yeah, what a disaster. And for Fernando Alonso, I feel so bad for him because, what's this? The last 4 races, he's always had something. Something has gone wrong. It's either a crash, and then the FIA, or it's reliability. It's just an absolute mess of a season for Fernando Alonso. And actually, I know a lot of people were laughing at him for the Aston Martin move, but perhaps with the luck towards the end of this year, he will actually be relishing in his decision, especially when we come round to March next year.
It kind of goes without saying at this point, but Max Verstappen took yet another dominant victory in Mexico. Back-to-back victories in Mexico City, and his 4th there, picking up previous victories in 2017 and 2018 as well. He finished ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez, and a repeat podium from last year. But the race, though, it was probably the worst of the year, let's be honest here. And with the Mexico City Grand Prix signing a new contract extension to 2025 this weekend, do we think its place on the calendar is deserved?
Well, it certainly isn't the best of circuits. In fact, I'd put it rather low. The high altitude actually could provide some interesting racing because the teams can run a lot more downforce and still get Monza levels of top speed, but it just doesn't really work. I don't know why. Though with Sergio Perez staying at Red Bull, I think we will see it on the calendar.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we're going to see it on the calendar for at least as long as Sergio Perez is there, unless they can find a new Mexican driver, and that will be another selling point. However, I feel like, to be honest, the first sector, with it being quite flowing, and you've seen a lot of battles there, that's a really good section. I really like that section. But it's the middle, where it's so narrow and it's so twisty, you lose the car in front, especially in years gone by, where the dirty air effect was so much worse for the cars following. But even the stadium section is so low speed that you can't really get too close. So I think perhaps it requires some renovations to it, but definitely it could be an incredible track, especially that first sector. We've always seen great battles there. It's just the middle, I think, that really ruins it. But that's just my opinion.
For me, it's definitely got potential, but it's the stadium section. I just hate it. Okay, it's cool. The fans in the baseball stadium, you get to see the cars going past, but it's so tight and twisty that it's just, yeah, I'm not a fan of Mexico. But whether we like it or not, it is here to stay until 2025. And after 4 races of marathon, we've covered all the action on track, but there was still a lot of news off track.
Yeah, there really was, with a huge announcement that was, to be honest, predicted by a lot of people, but it was Pierre Gasly who leaves AlphaTauri and I guess, also the Red Bull family, to join Alpine, which is, I think, going to be a very interesting move. You've got two Frenchmen, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, at a French team, and it's going to be very interesting. Those two, actually, I'm sure that you viewers already know because it's so widely talked about. They have a long history together, not all of it positive. So it's going to be very interesting to see the team dynamic, who will be the number one or the number two drivers, or will it be nice and equal? It's going to be a very interesting season next year, and I guess we'll have to wait and hold our judgment on whether this is a good decision, because Pierre now finally does move out of the shadows for the Red Bull program. He was never going to get back to Red Bull, to the main team. So it's good that he's taken this career decision. And to be honest, there was no other teams that could really offer him something at the moment. And if he didn't leave now, if he didn't leave AlphaTauri now, I feel like he would have been pushed at a later time.
The butterfly effect from this was the empty seat Gasly left at AlphaTauri, and Red Bull / the Red Bull family anyway, chose to pull a move similar to what they did with Perez at the end of 2020. They went with someone outside of their own academy and chose Nick de Vries, who impressed on his F1 debut at Monza, which was, again, a domino effect because Alex Albon was ill, but he still scored points, a 9th place finish, which was very commendable. And I think it's a good move for both parties. De Vries shows adaptability. He's raced in Formula E, where there's a lot of wheel-to-wheel racing and tough racing. And it should, on paper, work. But then again, we saw what happened in the same team with Gasly, for instance, or Albon, when they moved up to Red Bull.
AlphaTauri chose someone outside their academy, whilst Williams decided to pick someone inside. Logan Sargent will race with Williams in 2023 on the condition he gets the required super license points from his F2 campaign to do so. The American will be the first on the grid since Alexander Rossi in 2015 and the first full-time since Scott Speed. Yeah, again, Williams choose someone from their academy, which they're getting quite good at recently. They've used Nicholas Latifi, Jack Aitken, George Russell, Lance Stroll in recent years. So Williams Academy looks like a solid career choice for many drivers.
Of course, we also had the widely media populated news about the Red Bull cost cap or the budget cap. They leave that whole situation with a $7 million fine, $7 million fine, and a 10% wind tunnel reduction. Now, yeah, a very interesting debate, which I'm not going to get too into on here. It potentially deserves its own video or debate video in itself. However, when I went to the Red Bull factory a little while ago, I'm sorry to report, I did potentially take 2 cans of Red Bull, and that could be where all of this cost cap, budget cap has gone. So potentially even I have had a knock-on effect of this. So I would like to apologise to Red Bull. But no, of course, yeah, it's going to have a huge knock-on effect for the 2023 seasons. Christian Horner said that their overspending did not affect the 2021 or 2022 seasons, but I guess we'll have to hold judgment once again and wait and see.
And a bit back on the track, we saw loads of drivers make their FP1 debuts this month as teams rushed to finish the regulations of getting 2 rookies in a season. We saw people like Theo Bourchier, Robert Schwartzman, Alex Palou. We saw Pietro Fittipaldi, Logan Sargent. We saw loads of different names about. I think, personally, I don't know about you guys, it's getting a bit ridiculous having half the grid as different drivers. And Abu Dhabi is going to be even worse. So, yeah, these new rookie rules, how are we finding them?
Well, I mean, I have a theory for this, actually, because teams don't want to, let's say, waste. Not really waste, but you know what I mean. They don't want to waste the seat for the young drivers at the start of the year, because then they're still developing the car. They want their regular drivers to get to grips with it, test all the upgrades. So by the end of the year, when all that's done, they have more freedom to put those young drivers in the cockpit. But yeah, it's an effect that I mean, it doesn't really change anything. It's bizarre, but we're probably going to see it for years to come, unless the FIA do something about it, which I don't think they can't really.
Yeah, let's wait till Abu Dhabi, where we're going to have 7 changes. We're going to have Liam Lawson, he's going to come in for Red Bull. Jack Dunn will be there for Alpine. Felipe Drugovich will be there for Aston Martin. Robert Schwartzman will be in for Ferrari. Pietro Fittipaldi will be in for Haas. IndyCar star Pato O'Ward will be in for McLaren. And Logan Sargent will be back in for Williams. I believe that's 7 changes that are being made for Abu Dhabi. So the practice one in Abu Dhabi, you're going to have quite a different field. But finally, that is all the F1 news for October, so let's move on to some other series going on around the world.
MotoGP got underway in October with the Thai Grand Prix. A return to Thailand. It's been a few years away. As I mentioned earlier in the F1 thing with Singapore, it was a huge return after COVID, and it was the same for MotoGP Thailand. The race was incredible, to be completely honest. We had a KTM victory by Miguel Oliveira. KTM, they've been a bit quiet this season, which was it was good to see them on the top step again, and especially Miguel Oliveira. It was another Pecco Bagnaia podium, which, I mean, is that even a surprise? He is very much like the Max Verstappen of MotoGP in his current form. But it was an absolutely horrendous showing from Fabio Quartararo. The Frenchman's title chances, they are really dwindling right now. He finished 17th on legitimate pace. He did not fall. He just got a very poor start, but he just couldn't make up any positions. And it was a somewhat damp circuit as well. It was just, I don't know what is going on with Fabio Quartararo, but I think, to be completely fair, it points more towards the Yamaha, which the Thai Grand Prix is a straight, then a corner to the right hand, and then a huge straight, and then a hairpin, and then another straight. And so, yeah, you get the idea. There's a lot of straights, which notoriously Ducati are exceptional at excelling at, whereas the Yamaha certainly does not excel in down the straights. So that was the Thai Grand Prix. It was a very disappointing weekend for Fabio Quartararo, who definitely walked away from there in low spirits and walked into Australia, and it was an incredible, potentially even the race of the year. On the final lap, there was about 2 or 3 riders, maybe even 4, that could have actually legitimately won the race, but it was eventually won by Alex Rins, who is another one, just like Miguel Oliveira. He's had a very quiet year, and so has Suzuki. We know Suzuki will be leaving after the Valencian Grand Prix and will be exiting the MotoGP World Championship. And it was, once again, another Pecco Bagnaia podium. However, it was another strong showing for Team VR46. Now, anyone who's read the articles or even watched these videos knows I'm a huge Rossi fan, and it's great to see his team doing exceptionally well as they finished in P4 and P6, with Marco Bezzecchi even winning Rookie of the Year, and that is fully deserved. He's had a pole position at the Thai Grand Prix, and yeah, it's his rookie year on a bike and a team that is definitely not at the top. They are definitely the midfield team, so he is definitely one to watch for the future. But it was a Marc Marquez podium at Australia, and he's definitely had a strange season, as we all know. There's been calls for his retirement. There's been calls for further injury checkups and all that sorts of thing. But it really is great to see him back on the podium. And of course, then we moved into the Malaysian Grand Prix. Now, what a race this was between the two Ducatis, Pecco Bagnaia versus Enea Bastianini. Bagnaia, to be completely honest, looks like he's set to win the championship after being 91 points down, which, by the way, F1 included, every Premier Class motorsport, no one has come back from a deficit that big. This is an absolute MotoGP season classic, the 2022 season. put it down to who you want, who lost it, who won it. It's kind of similar to the Ferrari situation, to be honest, where actually Yamaha have bottled it for Fabio Quartararo, just like they did, or similarly, with Leclerc. However, Bastianini was right up there, challenging with Pecco Bagnaia, and he's on another midfield bike. So it was very intriguing to see him, because as of next season, Enea Bastianini will be partnering Pecco Bagnaia at Factory Ducati on equal machinery. And those guys have battled at Aragon this year. On the final lap, Bastianini just about found his way through and overtook Bagnaia to take the win. He definitely was not holding back, despite Bagnaia being in the championship battle. It's going to be incredible to watch that. And it really, really was a great race, the Malaysian Grand Prix. Bagnaia now leads the championship, heading into the finale at Valencia by 23 points. This basically means that Bagnaia has to finish in the top 15 out of like 23 riders, so he should do it. Realistically, all he has to do is finish 14th, and he wins the championship on countback. Fabio Quartararo has to win. He has to win on a circuit that actually does favour the Yamaha quite a bit, but to be completely honest, it's going to take an absolute miracle, which we have seen before at Valencia. We have seen a miracle before when Nicky Hayden beat Valentino Rossi to the 2006 MotoGP World Championship after Valentino Rossi fell. So that's what Yamaha will be hoping for. They will be hoping for a repeat of the 2006 finale. And of course, with the Malaysian Grand Prix does come the 11-year anniversary of Marco Simoncelli's passing, and it was very touching to see the tributes to him. It's definitely been a tough period for MotoGP since then. Valentino Rossi has said that his entire academy, the VR46 Academy, was formed specifically because of Marco Simoncelli. And of course, Marco Simoncelli himself does have his own team run by his father. They have a Moto3 team and a Moto E team. So his legacy lives on, and it's incredible to see that. And he was taken far, far too soon.
We also had 2 WRC events this month, the first one being all the way to New Zealand. Starting on Friday, Thursday night for us Europeans, it was M Sport Ford who set the pace, with Gus Greensmith winning a stage, but the challenge slowly faded away till Craig Breen decided to pay a tribute to Colin McRae by going off at the same corner that the Scot went off 20 years ago. Other than that, it was a seesaw battle for the lead on Friday, with 4 drivers, Sebastian Ogier, who was returning for this rally, as well as the last 2, Thierry Neuville from Hyundai, and the 2 championship protagonists of Oyt Tanak and the favourite Kalle Rovanperä. But it was Tanak who led at the end of day 1, though Efren Evans did take the lead come Saturday, but he was involved in a high-speed crash, which resulted in a roll and eventually, sadly for him, a retirement on the road section. Gus Greensmith, who was the aforementioned stage winner on Friday, also had a massive shot at special stage 10, which actually had to be interrupted. But apart from that, the rally went on rather smoothly. Oliver Solberg finished 5th for Hyundai on his last outing for the year. Oyt Tanak and Thierry Neuville finished 3rd and 4th respectively, mostly mistake-free. Neuville only had a minor spin on day 1, which cost him around 10 or so seconds. Ogier, on his return, finished 2nd, half a minute for Rovanperä, but of course nobody could stop him. Rovanperä, of course, because he is now the youngest World Rally champion, eclipsing Colin McRae's record by 5-something years. In between the rallies, it was announced that Solberg would leave Hyundai after New Zealand effectively, There are candidates to replace him, although nothing really has emerged yet. But also, Owen Tanak announced that he would also be leaving Hyundai come the end of the year. Since Toyota really are reluctant to change their lineup for 2023, there are two options for him: either M Sport Ford, who are in dire need of a driver right now, or a small sabbatical, at least from full-time rallying, for 2023 and beyond. Though at Hyundai, again, there are options, but Esa-Pekka Lappi, the Toyota driver who usually drives the third car along with Ogier, has emerged as a hot favorite to take the seat. In some rather more minor news, it was Greg Breen's co-driver, Paul Nagel's, last rally at Rally Spain, which we're going to talk about right now. Again, a four-way battle for the lead on day one, with the usual suspects: Ogier, Rovanpera, Tanak, and Neville. Meanwhile, M Sport were really nowhere this time. The car just couldn't handle the Spanish tarmac. And it showed, because in day two, Gus Greensmith had another massive shunt caught out by the hybrid boost, as he said, which again led to a stage interruption. But other than that, Ogier did start to pull away. The newly crowned champion Rovanpera did start the final day in second, but was eventually eclipsed by the tarmac specialist, the Belgian Thierry Neuville, who obviously Belgians and French and Spanish love tarmac, and it shows. Speaking of Spanish, Danny Sordo, he made his return, replacing Oliver Solberg. He didn't really show that much in terms of pace, but he did hold off Evans and Breen and did finish fifth in his home rally. Meanwhile, Ogier did finally get that elusive Rally 1 win that he's been chasing all year long, and is now sixth in the standings, ahead of, Craig Breen, who is a full-time driver, remember. Speaking of Breen, his gift, let's say, to his co-driver's last event wasn't really a good one, because on the final day he had a crash which resulted in him falling from 7th to 9th. Not the way that they wanted to finish their season, but it's okay because it really doesn't affect anything. M Sport really aren't fighting for that much this year.
There was one more championship to be decided in October with DTM as it came to its final round at the Hockenheim Ring, with Lucas Auer winning in a chaotic crash-filled race with the red flag pulled after a 6-car collision. A very fiery one as well. You should definitely watch it on YouTube if you haven't already. With only 17 out of 27 cars returning after the crash. Sheldon van der Linde, one of the championship contenders, had an spiral recovery drive as he competed against René Rast and Auer to win the title. Marco Wittmann, he struggled to get past the struggling Audi of Dev Gore on the penultimate lap, but it was Van der Linde who finished in P2, second, to lead the championship by 2 points going into the finale between him and Auer. And race 2 ended up with Van der Linde being crowned champion whilst Wittmann won the race, as Auer struggled with the increased performance ballast. The race ended with a massive crash that resulted in a long safety car period, and it ended BMW's 6-year winless championship streak in the DTM. Rast couldn't take advantage of his pole position. He ended up finishing in P2, and there were many other battles across the field, most notably between the Audis of Zog and Dev Gore. And as I said, Sheldon van der Linde claimed the DTM title for 2022. And with that being the monthly recap for all the series that happened in October, we now move on to the main event, the power rankings for October.
At number 10 is Enea Bastianini, purely because, and he definitely deserved to make this list, because he has had 3 exceptional results in the month of October: P6 at the Thai Grand Prix, P5 at the Australian Grand Prix in Phillip Island, and then a magnificent second place at Malaysia. Despite it being a track he has not actually ridden a MotoGP bike around before, and that was his first time riding the high-class machinery on that track. He is also on a midfield bike, so it's very challenging for him to even be in the same field and battling Pecco Bagnaia And of course, he was challenging Pecco Bagnaia, who is, spoiler alert, on this list.
Coming in at number 9, it's Charles Leclerc. He managed to recover from his horrible mid-season run of, well, mistakes or getting absolutely wrecked by his own team to get pole in Singapore, though with hindsight, second was the best he could get and he could hope for. He did get third in Japan. Again, that slight mistake does bring him down a bit on the leaderboard, which is why you're seeing him at number 9. But at the end of the day, it doesn't affect that much. He had a great recovery at the USA Grand Prix, coming in from 12th to 3rd, even fighting for 2nd, and even had a slight chance of fighting for the win at one point, had it not been for that horrible tire deg on the Ferrari. Finally, he finished 6th in Mexico. He was behind his teammate Sainz, although again, this was an off weekend for Ferrari since they had to tune down their turbos because of the high altitude.
Number 8 is Sebastian Vettel, because what an exceptional end to this season he is having. And I guess, sadly, what an exceptional end he is having to his F1 career. At Singapore, he finished in 8th, which definitely does not tell the full story, because he managed to hold off the incredible champions who were actually battling for the World Championship last year, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. He held them off in wet weather, on a damp track, on a street track. It was just incredible stuff. He also came back in Suzuka, another wet circuit, to finish in P6, and even just about managed to pip Alonso for that 6th place, pretty much on the line. Of course, he also had that incredible performance. I'm really running out of adjectives here. He just had an exceptional performance in the US Grand Prix, even leading the race for a period of time. Of course, Aston Martin, as I mentioned earlier, kind of messed up that strategy, but he had that incredible final lap battle with Kevin Magnussen. He's actually gained 16 points for Aston Martin. Aston Martin themselves definitely have a lot of momentum now. And here is the debate that I would like to put to you two, is with Sebastian Vettel retiring at the end of this season, but also considering his form at the moment, do we really think it is the right time for Sebastian Vettel to call it quits on his F1 career?
I think this form that Sebastian Vettel is in part thanks to him realizing that, yes, this is my final year, I might as well enjoy it now that he knows that he doesn't have to focus on really anything. I mean, yes, he's helping Aston Martin, but he went there with the hope that he would fight for podiums, maybe wins, even championships at some point. But when that became clear in his head, he realized it. He said, okay, might as well have some fun while you're at it. So I think the retirement thing is what's causing these results. Although I'm not too sure about it, because even he doesn't seem too sure about it.
It's sad to see him go, especially when he's going on a. His form's picking up, but you do think about it. It's like we're looking at performances like these for, like, let's say, several years ago. He was putting performances like this in a weekly. And in some ways, it's a shame that he's still got that ability left in him, but you can't get it week in, week out. And with all respect to Sebastian Vettel, he isn't a driver. He once was. And with, we've got this new crop of drivers coming in, and with him, he's clearly got other interests in the world, which he wants to focus on. And if his heart's no longer there, I think it's the right time for him to go. He's not one of the best drivers in the grid anymore. I think we can all agree on that. But it's nice to see him put in a few of his memorable drives before we say goodbye to him one last time. Moving on to P7 on our list is the 2022 DTM champion, Sheldon van der Linde. Did what his brother was unable to do last year in controversial circumstances and win the title in less controversial scenes than last year as well. Let's say that. I mean, his brother wasn't the biggest. It didn't have the biggest following after the incidents of last year. And in the Hockenheimring, despite the massive pressure of the championship upon him, he finished in P2 and P3 to get his first Dive-Bomb Power Rankings appearance since May. But I'm sure that is more important to him than his DTM title. In P6 is another DTM driver, Marco Wittmann. he went one better than Sheldon van der Linde did, and he finished P3, and he won the second event at the Hockenheimring. Wasn't quite the season he was looking for. He finished down in 9th. In fact, he got 2 of the 3 podiums he got all year at the Hockenheimring. But impressive enough to warrant a P6 standings for October, and that's actually his first appearance on the power rankings all year.
The top 5 is opened with who I actually think should potentially be higher up on this list, but nonetheless, it is Francesco Pecco Bagnaia. I mean, there really is no debate. He's had 3 consecutive podiums. He holds the championship lead by 23 points to Fabio Quartararo, despite being earlier this year 91 points down. He's had 5 DNFs this year, but still he has come back from the depths of hell to lead the MotoGP Championship heading into the final round at Valencia next month. It's just been incredible. He's been so smart, he's been so measured, so calculated in the back half of this season. The consistency he is showing is incredible because MotoGP, especially in this new age and this new era, it's so hard to be consistent. And that's actually why, for example, Valentino Rossi fell away in the end of his career, because loads of riders now are performing up to the level of World Championship material. I mean, if you've got Joan Mir, who's on the Suzuki and definitely not exactly the best rider, he won the 2020 MotoGP Championship. So you have all these incredible riders. Some of them somehow have a World Championship to their name, and Fabio Quartararo, of course, does for the 2021 season. So Bagnaia being right in our top 5 spot is well deserved, I think.
And at number 4, it's our new world champion, Kalle Rovanperä. Well, he didn't win both rallies, but he did enough, and he did actually win in New Zealand. He did beat his 8-time world champion teammate, and he didn't have to do much else, to be honest. Third in Spain didn't really matter because Toyota still clinched that manufacturer's championship, and there's nothing really more to say other than this has been his year through. It will be interesting to see his development.
On the bottom step of the podium, but by no means the least deserving driver or rider on this list, is Sergio Perez. I mean, that Singapore performance alone, when he just won so calmly and convincingly, was just phenomenal to watch. Honestly, he's been under so much pressure this year to perform because of being in Red Bull, and of course we know the stories of what's happened with Gasly and Albon, and he was also highly pressured actually coming into this season because he got that win in Monaco and people thought perhaps he could mount a championship charge. Okay, maybe he hasn't done that, but when his teammate and rival has been away from the front, Max Verstappen, making that mistake, of course, in qualifying, or more Red Bull, but whenever Max hasn't been there, Sergio Perez has, and it's just been, a phenomenal season for him. 2 wins to his name, and impeccable performance. I mean, he's got a podium in front of his home crowd in Mexico. Him and Red Bull won the Constructors' Championship, and now, which you definitely wouldn't have guessed this at the start of the season because it was all Max versus Charles Leclerc. Now it's actually a battle for second place in the drivers' standings between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc, and maybe even somehow George Russell. Don't know quite if he still fits into that category. But the question I have for you guys is, who do you think deserves P2 in the standings? Is it Sergio Perez, who's had an incredible comeback in the second half of the season, or is it Charles Leclerc, who has had his best season, I would argue, in F1?
I think just for the trials and tribulations that Charles has gone through this year, it will be at least a bittersweet reward to get that second place, although he has made mistakes of his own, but generally Perez is there because of his car. I mean, he has driven some excellent races. Monaco was great from him. Singapore was even better. But overall, I really think that that second place should go to Leclerc. Morally, at least, it's his in my book.
Yeah, I also agree. I think it should go to Charles Leclerc. I kind of think out of all that great runners up, out of the people to finish second but not quite to win a title, would I rank Sergio Perez among some of them? Nah, I wouldn't really. I would have ranked Charles Leclerc up there, though, especially with that mid-season stretch from whether it was Miami to about Spa, where it went wrong every single race. He's driven really well for long periods of the year. Leclerc. I'm not saying Perez hasn't, but I feel like considering the machinery Perez is in, there's some races where you think he should be doing a bit better. And I think Leclerc, considering all the stuff that he's had to go through, I think would be a very deserving P2. Although Perez, I think, would be a worthy P3 as well.
In second place is, well, an 8-time world champion, and that is Sebastian Ogier. Having played second fiddle all year to pretty much everyone from Sebastian Loeb, his arch nemesis, Kalle Rovanpera, or really anyone else, he finally won at, well, probably his favorite surface, tarmac. He won at Rally Spain, and he got his first rally win in a hybrid car, which is something he really wanted to do for his, well, slight comeback this year. And he did enough to win Toyota the manufacturer's title. So Toyota did really take both rally wins this month and also both championships. This month was truly painted in red, black, and white.
We may have missed 2 months of the podcast, but you won't be surprised to hear the results for September and October's P1. And yet again, I doubt you'll be surprised to hear the winner of the November DIVEBOMB Power Rankings, Max Verstappen. P1 in May, P1 in June, P1 in July, P1 in August, P1 in September, and now P1 in October. Yet again, Max Verstappen is top of the DIVEBOMB Power Rankings. His month started off shoddily with a very rare off weekend in Singapore, although not all the blame can be apportioned to him. But he recovered very quickly to cap off a dominant wet performance in Japan. It was a 45-minute race. He was 27 seconds up the road or something ridiculous. And what a fitting way to win his second World Drivers' Championship, apart from the weird way that which he won it. And in the USA, as we said, he had that pit stop. It looked like the win might have been out of his grasp on a rare occasion. But yet again, like is always the case in 2022, he still found a way to win. And his winning form continued in Mexico, where he broke the record for the most individual wins in one season, taking 14 wins out of the 20 races. And with this, he's also getting the most points in one season. He's breaking records at every single race we go to now, which I didn't even know he could break. But the main one, obviously, is the most wins in one season. And with a dominant World Championship performance this year, I'd like you guys to let me know, do you think this is the best ever individual season we've ever seen in Formula One?
I really think it is. I know a lot of people say that, Michael Schumacher's 2004 season and Sebastian Vettel's 2013 season, of course, they got 13 wins. For Sebastian Vettel, it was 13 wins in 19 races, I think it was. And for Schumacher, it was 13 in 18 races. So far, it's actually stacking up to be very close to that. In terms of win percentage, I think if Max wins the final 2 races, or the final remaining races, then he will actually have the highest percentage win rate in any season ever. So that is arguably more impressive, perhaps, if he goes on to win the remaining races. It'll be hard to do, of course. However, he's won 5 in a row before, and he's currently, I believe, on a 3-win race streak. So all he needs is 2 more to match that. So yeah, I do think that, let's just say he manages to get 5 in a row again, then that's 2 5 in a row streaks, and yeah, that's just incredible, especially in just one season.
The thing is, there's races where you could have won more this year. Silverstone, he was leading until he got that damage, and obviously, I think both Bahrain and Australia would have been a long shot, but he lost 36 points there. And Monaco, there was that crushing qualifying which pivoted him to, what was it, P4 on the grid. And Singapore, he had the Red Bull qualifying race. He could have won more races this year. And apart from, okay, that little moment in Singapore, it's hard to think of a moment he's made a mistake. Yes, he had that spin in Hungary and he went to the gravel in Spain, but he still won those races anyway. Okay, yes, Spain, it was because of Leclerc's failure, but at the same time, he somehow finds a way to get a performance out the back every single week. And you can even say at times, particularly the start of the season, he hasn't been in convincingly the fastest car. Like, he doesn't qualify on pole that regularly. It's incredible how he manages to put these performances in.
It is quite funny. I did think that basically every criticism that anyone has had of Max this year has been for off-track disputes. I mean, that really says something, because I don't think many people have complained about his racecraft this year. Basically, any complaints about him or his own team have been because of the cost cap. That is it. That's all there is to this season. No one can really poke holes in this championship apart from that.
Yeah, Verstappen really is shaping up to be a really complete driver. Whether he can be the face of F1 or not remains to be seen, but driver-wise, at least, maybe he can fix his qualifying a bit, but other than that, I really can't see a fault in him.
The guy he's only just turned 25, and on the all-times winner list, he's already 6th, and he's already got 2 world titles. And it almost feels like we're seeing the complete Max Verstappen now. If he continues his trajectory, let's hope he doesn't go like a Vettel. But in 3-4 years' time, this guy is gonna be scarily good. Like, it's hard to comprehend what he's done in the sport at the age he's doing it. And if we think this season is good, what could it be like in 2-3 years' time? It's truly incredible to think. And I think we're very much seeing maybe the greatest ever going through his career right now. Also, that is it. That is the end of the power rankings, but we still have one more month to look forward to, and not as much actually. We've got a bit going on. We have the Sao Paulo Grand Prix at the iconic Interlagos circuit, followed by the season finale in Abu Dhabi for Formula One. Talking of season finales, MotoGP, as mentioned by Owen, has its final race at the Circuit Ricardo tournament in Valencia, where the 2022 MotoGP champion will be crowned between Francesco Bagnaia and Fabio Quartararo. Another finale, World Rally Championship. They conclude their season from the 10th to 13th of November in Japan. And the World Endurance Championship will also decide its champion between Alpine and Toyota on the 12th of November at the 8 Hours of Bahrain. Formula 2 will have its final race of the season. The championship is already decided there, but loads to play for, particularly with Logan Sargent and his super license points, with the battle for third very much on in the standings. And there is one extreme e-race at the end of the month, Energy X Prix in Uruguay. So thank you for tuning in, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the Power Rankings podcast. We'll hope to see you next month. We'll have no off months again. And don't forget to subscribe to the DiveBomb YouTube channel whilst you're here, and follow the Instagram and Twitter at Project DiveBomb. We'll see you next month for the final top 10 of the season, and we'll look forward to December, where we will have the DiveBomb Power Rankings top 50 of the year. We look forward to seeing you then.